Greetings to all of you. I'm Sabrina, ready to take you through a journey where most of us, since lately, have shown a major interest, a major key to learn the art of public speaking. Because many do tend to have some kind of an anxiety towards a certain task to do. We tend to have low confidence with regard to ourselves in certain tasks which we want to carry out. So let me take you through how you can tackle the anxiety when it comes to public speaking. Public speaking has been a very important topic of discussion among many forums where we tend to enlighten many about how well you should come forward and present yourself, be it in college, be it in corporate level. If you can communicate very effectively, that would certainly take you to a different level of your career, or it could also lead a wonderful pathway when it comes to your educational level. This is an art. That is exactly how I would like to word it. Public speaking is an art of itself, since you have got to master all the tips, the suggestions, and certain practices which you will have to put into practice so that you can excel in speaking in a public forum. Also, do keep in mind, public speaking does not always stick into a frame where you have to speak to a bigger audience. It could be just addressing a certain topic to a particular person. And if you need to make an impression, you have got to present yourself effectively, along with strong communication skills, how well you're going to articulate your language. All that nitty-gritty areas are areas of concern when it comes to public speaking. As I was explaining to you earlier at the very introduction of my speech, I was telling you that it is an art. So, why should we master the art of public speaking? Let me tell you. For example, let's walk around an occurrence where you would be basically representing yourself at a corporate interview. You do have quite a lot of degrees with you, and you do definitely fit into the job description of that particular organization that they require an employee for. But have you ever encountered an issue where you have been rejected? Have you ever thought why? Simply, it could be because you have not presented yourself very well. So in layman's terms, I would say that you have not marketed yourself that effectively. So communication happens to be where you have to bring out the inner skills of yours, of whatever that you have learned, be it in the educational level or in your corporate life, where you put both these subject lines together. As a combination, you present your skills to a particular person who is keen to recruit you. So these are day-to-day occurrences one would face if you are a person who is engaged in the corporate level. Similarly, what if you are a salesperson? You want to make that killer sales call, but unfortunately, you tend to fail where you cannot pitch in and really voice your ideas, really say the important areas of concern to the party who is interested. So, wouldn't you think that all these day-to-day correspondence that we have has a link with public speaking? So it could be not necessarily under that terminology, but then again, we are engaging constantly with a group of people or with people who are listening to you to make a decision with regard to your future career or your enhancement. Similarly, if we look at a student who is in the college level and you are a prefect or you are a president of a club, there are many situations where you have to present yourself to maybe parents or your peers. There are many situations that arises where you have to speak to a group of people. So isn't it an art that you have to really get into business, where you have to carry out some solid content for your speech. So all these are interconnected when it comes to public speaking or making an effective communication related delivery of speech, written or speaking, which I will be taking you through mostly today on the topic of speaking, not on writing in particular though, but then again, how writing also comes into play so that you can create a wonderful speech. Being terrified is something that you do not have to feel awkward about, because when we do not know about a particular subject, every one of us tend to get a little terrified. We tend to think twice, thrice before trying it out. It's human nature. So we cannot avoid these fears which tends to get into our system. But if you're a challenge taker, you can definitely overcome this issue, because you are going that extra mile where you are making yourself all prepared and geared up to overcome this so-called anxiety which is building within yourself, creating this uneasiness where it is pulling down your inner skills. Okay, you cannot sometimes show your true capabilities to somebody purely because you have that thing that says fear, which is common though among any one of us when we are trying or attempting to do something which we are not comfortable to do. Be it driving, for example. If you have a fear to drive, of course, yes, that is going to give you nightmares until you really hit the road. In the similar lines, if you have a fear to talk to few people, that's going to be a big issue, because if you would not come out from that shell of fear, you will not be able to perform yourself that excellently among any platform. Always think twice, thrice, why am I doing it? Why should I do it? In which way would it have an impact in my life? In which way is it going to add value to my life? So if we keep thinking on those lines as to how well it is going to create an impact in our lives, I'm sure anybody would take that extra effort to put yourself into that mode that would say, yes, I can do it. You can tackle this fear. As I mentioned to you, by a lot of practice, by a lot of observing many situations, and then taking that initiative is something that someone has to think twice before taking this so-called challenge. So if you can take this initiative where you will think on the lines that I would do it so that I can overcome this fear, public speaking is not going to be much of a big task. The more you keep practicing, the more you're going to address a bigger crowd of people, automatically that fear would vanish. We have to understand that when we master something which we are not very familiar with, which we find it a little uncomfortable to master, the results are going to be in abundance. So that is exactly why I would like to tell you that if public speaking is mastered, the benefits are in abundance. Because even your day-to-day conversation is going to sound very confident. So you are going to have that extra power in your communication, because you have to understand that communication turns out to be a very, very powerful tool. And to master this, not only the words will work, your tone, your attitude, your knowledge, your logic, the way you interpret a certain subject line, all that matters today when it comes to communication. There might have been a period of time where if you only knew the data and only if you knew the statistics, you were considered as a wonderful speaker. But today things have changed. Along with the statistics, along with the research, along with the data that you hold on to, the way you present yourself through the tone, with the right kind of English terminologies, all that has a major link with communication today. So you can always start in a way where it is easier for you, in a way that it is approachable. So that is exactly how one could start this so-called art of speaking. I like to use this word art because for me, once you excel in it, it's as if you have already mastered an art. So communication, be it even in the level of college, or be it in the level of among little children, or among working professionals. Among children, you will be learning it from the grassroots levels if you are excellent in your communication skills, because day by day, the situations that you are going to overcome, you're going to develop yourself as a very matured adult with this skill that says that you're an excellent speaker. So excellent speaker means it's not that always you will be going and presenting yourself in a public forum, as I mentioned to you earlier. It could be even a general conversation where you will be speaking to a customer if you are a working professional, or you could be trying your best to influence somebody, maybe a superior with regard to a project plan. So how do you voice it? What sort of words do you use to pitch it? All these matters, along with the right kind of tone. So let's move on to our next point. I'm sure that will give you some tips. In any subject matter, it's very important to know your roots. For me, I was curious to know, how did people get into this subject line that says public speaking? From where did it begin? How did it exactly start? Who got inspired by this subject line? Why did they want to take it to a different level? Why did they want to influence people to speak right, to speak effectively? It was a line of interest for me personally. So here, I did my own little research, which I felt that is important by anybody before they learn anything which is new to them, to get to know the origin, the beginning, how did it all begin. Yes, you could take a few minutes to go through this slide to get to know how exactly and where exactly public speaking began. I shared a slide with you as with regard to how did public speaking began. So, as I've been always continuously using this term that it is an art, now that we know that this is exactly where it originated. So you could see it was not only with regard to holding on to the resources that you knew or know where you are speaking to somebody to impress. So it is an art, how well you are going to get an audience to listen to you. So when it comes to an impromptu speech, for example, an introduction matters a lot. Why? Since people of today are not very interested to listen to long, drawn introductions. So it's very important for someone to create innovatively, very creatively, an introduction to get the attention of the audience. So there are a lot of interesting articles which are available in the internet today, which has some very authentic details where you can run through and enlighten yourself more and more on the lines of how well you can create a powerful introduction. Because if you are a person who is capable of creating a wonderful introduction, that itself would automatically keep the audience connected with you. So when we move on to the second part of an impromptu speech, which you will have to take through the journey of that topic or the subject line that we are discussing, if you can bring out unique examples, if you can bring out some very interesting points, maybe even certain topics which we have heard before, but then again, you add a point or you bring out a twist in that speech where someone would not think that they should not be listening to you, but they will be engrossed with the conversation that you are delivering. Similarly, when it is the closing, that is the conclusion of your speech, if you can give a very powerful message, maybe a suggestion which is thought-provoking, or it could be even an example you're summing up the speech with, are some of the tools that you can utilize so that you can be an effective speaker. Use the same technique when you are speaking in your day-to-day life as well. As I mentioned to you earlier, you could be having a casual conversation with your superior sometimes where you're trying your best to say that the idea that you are presenting to uplift the organization is something of a matter or a concern that they should think of. So there's a way of presenting your idea. So all these are connected with communication today. So give it a thought and do think how we can explore this matter of concern, and let me take you through this journey. Once you know what, it certainly gets easier. You could run through this slide. My point number one would be to focus on your confidence so that you are not nervous. When a speaker is nervous, do you know that automatically all the organs which are connected with speaking has an impact, and that would have a drastic impact on your speech. So the more confident you are, speaking in a public forum or speaking to a stranger for the very first time will never ever make you nervous. So work on tips and work on areas where you can develop your confidence, which is extremely very important, and that is exactly why I have slotted in as number one. Moving on with number two. As I also spoke to you a bit earlier, crafting your speech according to your audience is important. You should know your audience first. If you do not know your audience, it's going to be a bit of a problem because you will not be coming up with the right kind of ideas, you will not be sharing the right kind of data, and then maybe even the vocabulary. It will be not the right way of doing things. It shows that you are not prepared. You are unaware with regard to what you're talking, and that would not make you an effective speaker. So it's very important for you to identify your audience. Now, for example, if you're speaking to a group of 16, 18-year-olds, a serious subject, even it could be, but then again, adding a little bit of humor, making the subject line a little bit more interesting so that you can keep the crowd engrossed with that subject line, even if it is a very, very boring topic. So that is exactly why you should know your audience before you craft your speech. Create a framework, that is my point number three. So create your framework for your speech with the most effective data. Always work around topics, examples, which people have not heard before, but it has been spoken elsewhere and your audience are unaware. So that becomes a point that somebody would always retain in their memory because you're coming up with an idea that they have not heard before, and you're coming up with suggestions and opinions which has taken place in a different destination, and you're linking it right here so that that becomes a new topic of line for the audience that is engrossed with you. So effective data, unique data, data that would touch your heart, data that would make you think are some of the points that I would like to highlight when you are creating your framework for your speech. Point number 4, keep an eye on the audience so that you know that they are listening to you. So eye contact is extremely very, very important so that you are speaking to them, right? You want to speak to a group of people, surely, isn't it? You don't want to speak to a blind wall. So because of that, keeping a straight contact. It's not glaring though. Eye contact is not glaring at your audience. It is having a slight, understanding, so that you are also trying to exchange your ideas with a group of people. So scan through. If the crowd is pretty bigger in number, you can always scan through. You can pick and choose people who are actually genuinely connected with you, so that you also feel a little comfortable to continue the conversation with, if you're a person who's trying it out for the very first time. So when you are observing your audience, you can definitely identify certain participants in the audience would be genuinely interested in your speech. So earmark these personalities and continue delivering your speech by continuously looking at them, so that you feel comfortable to deliver your speech, and then that is going to be an effective communication. Looking at number 5, your credibility, which will definitely add a glow to your personality. So these are the points which you will have to work with practice. Like certain terms, certain phrases, certain proverbs, it could be idioms, it could be solid examples, which will give that kind of edge. Someone would say that you are an excellent speaker. Even it could be your tone. It could be your vocabulary, it could be your formal way of presenting yourself, it could be even simple gestures. Generally, we do not recommend hand movements a lot in a public speech. Similarly, filler words like are being not recommended, because the more filler words you use, that is going to cause a bit of an uneasiness for the listener. Moving on to number 6. Having a personal touch, adding a little bit of humor, narrating a story. Effective language and phrases can definitely add more value to your speech. People love to listen to stories. And similarly, if it is a story which you have experienced by your own self, trust me, the audience would love to hear it, because people want to hear real life experiences. And that is exactly what you're trying to do in your speech, isn't it? You just don't want to go and say certain words for the sake of saying. You want to make an impression. You want to create an impression. Similarly, if you can use a storyline which would make people think and work and react and recall and create memories, that is exactly how a speech could touch a person. And that is our entire motive, isn't it, in speaking to an audience. Speaking about number 7, minimize or try not to read from scripts. Instead, try to use your own skill of mastering the art of speaking without documents. The more you can engage with an audience with the minimum paper, that would be extremely very effective, because people want to see your reactions through your facial gestures, through your words, through your reactions. So try your best not to memorize maybe, but then again, try to have a very good understanding about what you want to speak, so that you don't have to use paper to look and read out. Number 8, that's gestures. The non-communication signs are very important, because certain eye expressions, certain bodily gestures could be a little unpleasing, better known as the term rude rather. So we don't want to make our audience feel uncomfortable, isn't it? So every reaction of ours, every attitude that we apply through our gestures also has an impact. Even the way sometimes you drag a chair and sit down, if you feel by dragging that chair would cause a kind of an impact to another, that it would give an indication that you're rude, that's not a very pleasant way of getting about with anything, especially when it comes to public speaking. So work on your gestures. As I told you, many hand movements are not suggestive ideas, so try to keep your hand movements limited. And when you're pacing up and down, be cautious about all these movements. So gestures do matter. Point number 9. Start a speech with awe. As I told you, our introduction is very important. So a dynamic thought, a dynamic idea, these are very important to keep the ball rolling, so that the audience will be engaged with you. So a powerful introduction is very important. That is something that you cannot master overnight. Then again, by reading, by adding, by creating lines which will keep the audience engrossed until the end of the subject that you're planning to talk is important. That is why you have to start your speech with an or kind of an impact. My last point, that is number 10, preparation. Of course, without preparation, you cannot do anything. You need to practice. The more you practice, practice, and practice, definitely all these points that have been enlisted would be a simple task for you. So whatever that you want to do without preparation, without practice, you can never ever excel. We went through in detail with my previous slide with solid 10 points. So we now do know the do's and the don'ts of public speaking. So before we attempt, we can always go back to the points that I haven't listed to you, and you can run through and see the areas which you are capable of doing and the areas which you are not capable of doing. Do you know that you happen to be the best judge about yourself? It is you who knows about your weakness as well as your strengths. So depending on that, you can definitely capitalize on the do's and the don'ts so that you can make an effective delivery with your speeches, be it in a public forum or if you want to speak to someone with effective communication. It's interesting to observe certain thought lines which has been shared by people who have been excellent speakers, globally in particular. So just take a look at this statement which has been made by a highly motivational coach. Fear of public speaking could be an obstacle, and that could be the very obstacle where someone would not take the initiative to learn. And if you don't learn it, and if you don't practice it, obviously the results are not going to be glamorous. So this is why it has been stated by a motivational coach itself that when you have an inner fear about speaking, that would certainly turn out to be an obstacle. When it becomes an obstacle, you become a low performer. So your performance depends about your self keenness to learn that art. So if you are not geared up personally to go out and reach this target that says that you're not willing to accept, then of course we cannot expect wonders. So you have to come out from this so-called fear phobia. If you have a fear, you have to start in low levels, such as you start speaking to 1 or 2 people. Then you gradually speak to 4 or more. And that way you will be gradually increasing the number of people that you're going to engage with. And that itself is an obstacle that you have overcome. So this is something that you have to motivate your own self. If you are going to live in a fear, thinking that you are not capable of achieving that target, then of course you will never ever learn. You should understand that once you master the communication skills, that's going to add a whole heap of value. Not only in your day-to-day work, it's going to add more and more advantages in any task that you're going to engage in. Learn and practice so that you can do your best. I find it very interesting to read more and more with regard to a subject line which I would like to learn. So similarly here, I have also added this very important point. Better communication skills. That means you're adding more value. So if somebody who is in the corporate level, who is a working professional, you have to think about these lines more seriously. Because if your communication skills are at a lower level, you have to understand that your capitals, your revenue, which you are planning to bring into your organization is going to be minimum. Do you know that because of poor communication, many people have lost a lot of opportunities. They have lost a lot of business calls. Even by a simple hello, if you do not say the hello effectively, you are going to lose a client. So this is why many organizations tend to spend a lot of money when it comes to training and development, focusing mainly on communication, because if you do not know what to say to impress your client, to impress your business partner, to partner with you so that you can make an impression in your business journey, it's going to be a problem. So it's very important for many organizations to think on the lines of developing the skills of their employees when it comes to communication skills. It could be a simple term, but if you do not know to say that simple term in a way that it would impress your client, your capitals, don't even think about it. You may not get the desired revenue back into your organization. So these are the things that you have to think when it comes to communication skills, because if you do not have the right kind of attitude towards communication, it's going to have an impact in your day-to-day life as well. Your ultimate speech. Yes, ultimately it is your speech. How do you get about with your speech? If you do not know how to create your speech, it's going to be a bit of a problem. So let's see how well we can effectively create a wonderful speech so that that would make you a very impressive speaker. Let me share some topics and certain suggestions with you. I have categorized it for you so that it's easier for you to get at what I'm trying to explain, and it's going to be easy for you to develop your speech with the right kind of content. For example, if it's science related, you can pick topics which will make a person give them extra interest, where they would get interested to listen to you, because they don't want to hear the same old topics which has been narrated by many in different styles in many ways, but just few words here and there change. That is exactly not what they want to hear. They want to hear certain topics which are not been spoken of before, not that has been spoken, but then again, how well you create it sometimes, that could always make someone interested, because generally science related topics, many don't have an interest to listen to. But then again, there could be a group of people who are very keen to listen to it. So then it's important for you to try and pick subject lines that will make you an impressive speaker. When the category says self-development, you can take a minute and go through it. I've given you certain suggestions. Like when it comes to leadership styles, is it important for somebody's personality? Does it depict a person's personality? So these are certain topics which we would like to hear. We would like to listen to in any age group for that matter, because you can be a leader even in your college, you can be a leader even in your organization. So these are topics that would make anybody tend to listen to you. So pick and choose subject lines which will bring in a bigger audience who would listen to you. Finally, I have also spoken about society related. So we can speak about suggestions, ideas like eliminating poverty. How do we get about it? Sometimes you might have some super ideas and you want to very badly share it with a forum of people. So here, public speaking audience would be the right kind of an audience where you want to come and share your ideas. You want to come and give your super solutions to a problem which nobody has thought about before, or certain ideas which has already been implemented and you want to fine tune those ideas. So if you are a good, effective public speaker, you can definitely work on the lines of developing your speech so that you are exchanging your ideas effectively. That cannot be done if you are not good with your words, if you are not good with your tone, if you are not good with your pronunciation, because nobody would understand you. So that is why communication today does not only mean about just delivering ideas and subject lines through words, through gestures, through bodily expressions, through words, your tone, all that matters today, and especially pronunciation. We have taken you through, and I have taken you through a mini journey with regard to how well you can work on the lines of public speaking. So before I conclude my tiny introduction-based guidelines, I would like to sum it up with this very powerful quote that has been also once again presented by a motivational speaker. As you can see, communication is a skill. It is certainly a skill. As I told you, my favorite term, the art. So you can learn this just as similar that you're riding a bicycle. I really like this quotation because the more you keep reading it, it's going to give you that push, your inner push that you are going to master this skill, no matter what, because the results are going to be in abundance. So let's work on this on a gradual pace by making sure that we will somehow excel in this. Communication is a very, very powerful tool. Once you master it, sky is the limit. So with that note, I would like to say thank you and do go back, practice and make yourself the best speaker possible.